Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to Rebelscast. My name is Jonathan. Joining me today is Nicki.
Hello.
So, hey Nicki, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Got a bit of a sinus infection, so if it
Oh.
sounds a bit nasally or so, it's that. I thought it was just some kind of cold, but went to the doctor today, and so we got some antibiotics, so hopefully I'll start feeling a bit better.
I hope so. Those aren't fun. I get them all the time.
Yeah, I think I probably do. I just don't know it. So, anyway, so tonight, we're finally back with the second half of season 1 and Star Wars Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we are going to be discussing Path of the Jedi.
It's a great title.
Yes.
Definitely fit it.
Definitely sounds similar to some Star Wars books that have been written.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like some of the early Zahn books or the Barbara Hambleys.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound quite like, some other episodes we've had, like Rise of the Old Masters and,
Mm-hmm.
Fight or Flight. It sounds a bit more epic as such.
Right. No, it definitely has a very literary feel to it.
Right, so I think tonight we're going to try to focus, think of some new kind of stuff, so we're going to kind of get kind of specific with kind of focusing on some of the things like animation, quotes, and the music.
Right.
I think we're going to kind of try something new. Kind of won't be very, this is just kind of a tryout to see kind of how it works out, kind of a new format. So, let's see. So, we start off with, of course, Ezra running. He's just always running, and of course we kind of have some kind of teaching little, kind of moment where it's like, I don't know, it just seems like some of these things are starting to become a pattern when Ezra just walks right into Kanan's room.
Right.
I don't know, it just seems like the kind of pattern. When Kanan is meditating and suddenly he's disturbed, whether it be Zeb and Ezra, or it be, as Kanan just busting through the door.
Right. There's not a whole lot of privacy on that ship, and I think it's nobody really kind of cares. It truly is like a family where people just walk into your room without even knocking.
Yeah, it's
if you live in a big family like that.
Yeah, what was it? He's like, "Can I come in?" And he's like, "You didn't knock, so what makes you think you needed an
invite?" Yeah, I like that. It was such a great comeback for Kanan.
Right.
Because it kind of taught, well, you didn't knock, so you must have thought that you didn't need a special invitation. Which was like, next time knock, dude.
And then he kind of apologized, and then it was one of those kind of things where it was just kind of like, Ezra wasn't really apologizing for that. Not that, it's for being missing training.
Right.
And it was one of those, it's all the same. It's kind of all,
it's all connected.
It's all connected, right. But it's kind of, I mean, he definitely said he wasn't just late for training. Did he actually say he
missed it?
He just completely missed it. What was Ezra doing?
Well, he said he was hanging out with Sabine.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and I like when he said hanging out with Sabine, he kind of did he kind of put his hand on the door?
There was a little acknowledgement, kind of shy, yeah, it's like it was Sabine. He's such a 15-year-old boy.
Yes.
Who has a crush on an older, a 2-3 years older girl, and he's who thinks of him as a little brother, but he still digs her.
Right. So kind of this overall, it's a really cool kind of episode where it was just kind of, a lot of callbacks to especially Empire.
Yeah, definitely.
Back. which I know that was really cool. And since you're kind of the original trilogy fan,
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of things that reminded me of, in particular, Empire Strikes Back, as it is not just the best of the Star Wars films, but in my opinion, but also my favorite. So I'm always picking up on those kind of little moments.
right. I think it was so the episode was basically, Kanan is like, we're gonna, teach a kind of, he wants to test Ezra, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is really more of a test for himself, I think. I don't think he was testing Ezra, but I think he was also testing himself and how good a master he is and how good a Jedi he still is.
Right, and it was kind of like so it was definitely kind of cool, and I think they just kind of wanted to, get away from the ghost and kind of just take the Phantom.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's here, it's on Lothal, and it's just like, I mean, that little shuttle, that little thing is the Phantom is really only good for like a planet-wide exploration. So, if it's not on Lothal, then
the story would have been a little different.
I mean, it's just like
they would have had to set it up somewhere else. But we know that it can go into deep space, but not too far from the mothership.
Right.
From the ghost.
I mean, if there's like if there's like a moon or something, but I mean, I think
that's no moon.
But it doesn't have like a hyperdrive or anything, does it?
I don't think it does because when they detached it in hyperspace, it didn't. I don't think it has that wide. It's kind of like a TIE fighter in that these are short range fighter. It's a short range vehicle rather than a long range. So I think it's definitely more, like they said, it's a shuttle. It goes from place to place and place to place. It's not meant for long distances.
Right. So this is kind of surprising. The second time watching it through, I'm like, it's on the fall. I'm like, well, I kind of assumed that, the fact that using the shuttle, opposed to like, I mean, it would have been kind of crazy for them to just like, okay, you can, I can't direct the ghosts, but I can tell you where to, that would have really worked.
And it really didn't. We didn't need anybody else to go. It was just Kanan and Ezra. So if they'd taken the ghost, everybody would have had to go, and that would have distracted, I think, from the focus of the episode. Because either you're wondering, well, what are they doing while Ezra and Kanan are out there, being one with the Force, and then you get, it would be a distraction, even just not seeing what's going on. Just like, what are they doing? What could they possibly be doing? And they're probably bored out of their skulls.
I mean, like, Hera's like, what did she, like, when Kanan's kind of not, before they leave, what did Hera say, like,
basically that he needs to, that they need to do this.
Yeah, they really need to do this.
You need to do it for Ezra, but you need to do it for yourself as well.
Right.
And she was right. It was a path they both needed to walk in their different ways.
Right. I mean, and I think, and another thing is that this episode, we kind of learned, kind of expanding more of I mean, not really the EU, but I'm just saying, as far as like, canon goes, the outposts and such.
Right.
That was definitely interesting. They haven't really talked so much, as far as the Star Wars canon, as far as like temples and outposts. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the reference. I like the reference that they made that there are other outposts and other temples, and that the Empire only knows about most of them. So it really kind of opens up, I think. Even the original trilogy is like, we're told at the beginning of the original trilogy there are no Jedi. Their fire has been extinguished from the universe. But then we find Dagobah, and is there maybe there's a temple on Dagobah somewhere that's why Yoda went there. But to know that there are others out there that the Empire hasn't found gives you a kind of hope that there are more Jedi to draw on in the future. Right. Kind of makes them seem not as alone. They're just in hiding, or they're still waiting for their Padawans to come back. Like the masters in the temple.
Yeah, that was definitely a kind of disturbing image there.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way the imagery on Lothal where those outcroppings that kind of remind me of Cambodian Buddhist temples with the triangular kind of shape. And I really liked that the temple was hidden in one of those because it really did remind me of a temple. And I like the fact that they're hidden so well that quite possibly there really are Jedi still out there that haven't been sensed, haven't been found.
Right, and I think it was that, what did he say that, it's a lot different now than it was when I was training to be a Jedi. And the fact that, before, there was thousands of Jedi, but now he says there's only the Force. And I really like that quote. It's just, it's just, the Force still exists, and all, but it's just that, the Force users, there are no active, there's much less Force users.
Right. And I kind of took it also to mean that we're not an organized group anymore, like we were under the Jedi Council. We are the Force. The only thing we have left, we don't have the Council, we don't have the Temple. What we have left is the Force. And as we know, the Force encompasses all things. So I kind of took it as metaphorically, we may not all be united, but we still have but the Force is still there. Therefore, there is a part of us that is united.
Right. So I think it was fairly interesting, so many times, like we mentioned before, Kanan is just spending this time meditating. And he was meditating while, telling Ezra just to kind of like try to find somewhere, now it's your job to like find our way in.
Right. You have to do it, and then Ezra comes back after, kind of feeling out the temple literally. That they both have to do it. So it is a place, and it seems to be like this is a place for masters and their Padawans to discover and to experience together.
Right, and I thought it was definitely interesting that like Cadence is to like listen to the rock or something.
Yeah, listen to it, which goes along with everything we know about the Force. Is you have to listen to all things. Everything has an essence. Everything has the Force, and it's a very Taoist philosophy that there is spirit in all things. There's spirit in water, there's spirit in rock, there's spirit in soil, and I see that the Force, we've all heard the comparisons of the Force to Buddhism, but I'm also seeing a lot of Taoist philosophy going through there as well.
Yeah, that's really the animation that sticks out to me. Being Ezra's just like watching that thing, the temple just like spin around.
Right, and the dust that was kicked up, that was really beautiful. The animation sequence that stood out the most to me was Kanan meditating on the ghost, and it was just with the star maps.
Oh yes,
that was just so beautiful to me, and then to kind of mirror that with later in the episode with Ezra in the temple and the world, the temple falls away and it's just him at one with the universe.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really nice bookend because it was like that's when he kind of was starting to get it.
Right. And I think it was definitely, and I think, a big part of this episode was confidence, having confidence in yourself, and the fact that, Kanan, when he's by himself, he doesn't really have quite a confidence. So.
Right. He was never a master. He was barely graduated from being a Padawan. And I thought it was very cool that his master was a female Jedi, because we don't know so much about other masters and Padawans, and how they're paired up and stuff. So I think he is feeling a lot of that. He's kind of like, he wasn't in the Jedi Order as long as anybody else, so he kind of had to make his own way after the fall. And so he kind of became this new breed of Jedi, because he's obviously, space married to Hera, and and he doesn't exactly follow all the tenets of the Force and of being a Jedi. So he's kind of that newer kind of breed of Jedi that wasn't raised all the way like Obi-Wan was. Like he was pretty much from day one to the day we lost him, he was the old order. And Kanan seems to be like the new order, and he reminds me more of what Luke becomes.
Right.
Like more angry, a little darker, lacking in confidence, and not really beholden to the masters because there are none. So he can kind of become his own Jedi.
Right. I think part of it is that he, trying to adapt to stuff he was raised on. I mean, it's already like you said, he's barely, we don't even think we don't even know if he faced the trials.
Right.
I don't think so. But
I don't, based on the age, like what the ages are that we know of and when these events are taking place, I can't, because we know when Obi-Wan took the trials, it was at the end of, it was insinuated at the end of Phantom Menace that he had just taken the trials because Yoda says you're now a Jedi Knight. So we don't know what age Kanan was because he's obviously still very young.
Obviously old enough to take the trials. It's just that,
Right.
he's just
Now,
he's
but
just,
was he old enough when the Jedi fell?
right.
Because how's he going to do the trials without the Jedi, without the temple?
Right. So it's just kind of an impromptu he's kind of working with.
Right, and he's kind of having to make up his own, training course. He could do what his master did, and I would love to know which Jedi was his master.
Yeah, they did mention it.
Did they say who she? I didn't hear a name. I just heard it was she, and I was like, oh, is it Adika Leah? Was it?
I know they mentioned it in an episode. I just cannot.
Okay, because I don't remember it. I would love to find out because there's some, the Jedi we know from the temple who are on the council that it would be really cool. But there's also, because like Luminara would have been one, and Adika Leah, and the little Yoda, the Yodette.
Oh, his master was Depa Bala.
Okay, not one I'm familiar with, so I'll have to do some research. But yeah, I think he's kind of having to make this up as he goes along and try to be as close to the master that he had as he could be. But it's a new world order. It's a new Jedi order. It's, it's a whole, it's training under duress almost. Kind of like Luke. Kind of Luke had to be trained, during, basically during a war.
Right. I think another thing to say is that, Kanan's, because then the episode back, he's like, what was it? Do or do not, there is no try, or something. He's like, yeah, that always confused me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I like that because that is something I think most Star Wars fans have. We accept it because it's Yoda. We don't really question it, but it's like do or do, there is no try. But you kind of have to. Doing is trying. If you try something, you're doing something. You just don't always succeed. So what's he saying about success? That it only counts if you have a success. And but yeah. I think probably that was echoing some criticism of that particular expression.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is just that he's just kind of like, he kind of thinks of stuff that's good to say, but then he kind of realizes, wait a sec, I never really learned quite what that said back then.
Right. It's like we learned these sayings and we learned these expressions. This was wisdom of our masters, but what did it mean?
I don't really have my old master to go back. He's not like, Anakin. Anakin, if he had like some kind of question, he could go ask Obi-Wan.
Right.
But Kanan doesn't really have any other,
Right. Right.
Aside from like a Jedi, holocron, he doesn't really have any other point of reference.
Right. And speaking of Yoda.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. But we see that kind of like, and this is definitely a common thing where illusions, hallucinations, Jedi see when they get, especially when they are alone, whether it be like, whether it be with Empire or if it be, the Genndy Tartakovsky series definitely sticks out with Anakin's scene when he's facing the trials and he sees like all that really disturbing.
Right. It's like the Force is almost testing them on, and it's so that scene where they entered the temple and I had the vibe. And maybe it was the music cue as well, but it was like Luke going into the cave. And I could just hear Yoda saying, the cave, remember your failure at the cave.
Right.
And because it was like Luke going into that cave and facing his worst enemy, his worst fear. So he went in, Ezra goes into the temple, into this dark cavernous space, and he sees his greatest fear, which is the Inquisitor. And then...
I think one thing to say before is that, I think one little funny thing where it was like, kind of an itty, bitty, mighty, low.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, trying to pick the way that it came.
Yeah, it was like that magical thinking. thing. It was like, well, do I do this one, this one, this one? So he had that little rhyme down, and then then we see Kanan come up and just say, use the Force. Jeez.
And of course, Kanan and then we kind of see, Kanan kind of starts running, but we realize, it's just an illusion, but it kind of looks like it, it could be, because we just see Kanan, like, coming down. Of course, we don't see him, like, enter. We don't see him, like, enter from where, like, he was before.
Right. We saw the door close behind Ezra, but then that was my clue that this was probably one of those cave things like Luke went through, was that it wasn't really happening. It was because, how did Kanan get in? Because he showed up really quick. And so I thought that was the temple playing with Ezra's mind.
Right. And I think it was just kind of the wanting to have someone else.
Right. Exactly. I think that's a really good point. It's like he didn't want to do it alone. Well, with the Force, you're never alone, but he hasn't kind of figured that out yet. Right. And then to go and to see the being, the entity he fears that represents something he fears, like the Empire, and fighting the only father figure he has. And I think it preyed on a lot of his fears about losing his family.
Yeah. I think, the Inquisitor kind of, he's given a very elegant style of fighting. He does. He has like the hand behind his back. And it's a very kind of British thing. Just like Jason Isaac would do.
Yeah. It's a very British kind of traditional classical fencing where you have a posture. It's not just go crash, 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 hit, dodge, dodge, dodge. It's very choreographed, and every moment is elegant and fluid. And I really love how he brings that to that character brings kind of that understated elegance and the danger. Like all the guys in the Empire, as we know it in the original trilogy, are these British guys who are supposed to be, in our popular culture consciousness, British guys are the cool, suave, fancy pants guys. Like we want to be them. We want to emulate them. And in Star Wars, no, all the British guys are bad. Which, as Eddie Izzard said, is because of the American Revolution. But so I like that he kind of brings that elegance to the character. It's not something Vader had.
Right. Vader was like a tank.
Vader just is like hit, crash, crash. I'm going to get. He was a great swordsman, but there was no grace to it.
It'd be kind of hard.
He's basically a tank.
Yeah, he's just like...
He's an iron lung with feet.
Yep.
And one of which is not real.
I can definitely see an iron lung with feet. I can just kind of figure that.
It sounds like a Mad Magazine version of Darth Vader.
Yeah. I think, the scene was a little, definitely a little shocking, and I think we kind of, I wasn't really surprised when the Inquisitor just strikes Kanan, and the lightsaber just goes right through.
Right. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like Darth Maul taking out Qui-Gon too, because that was the first time we as fans had seen a lightsaber do that. Kind of like the scene at the beginning of Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon just jams the lightsaber through, against the metal and just kind of uses it like a drill. So we'd always seen a more graceful kind of movement with lightsaber, but I'm just going to stab you. Just right in the stomach. I'm just going to stab you. It was like, okay, well, that ended that fight very quickly. But it was also when I really knew it wasn't really happening. I got kind of that, okay, this is like Darth Vader and Luke in the cave on Dagobah right from the beginning. But that's when I knew, yeah, this isn't happening. Yeah, this is a lesson. This is a training moment for Ezra. It's not happening. Kanan's not there. The Inquisitor's not there.
And of course, he kind of grabs Kanan's lightsaber and he kind of has that moment of like, let's see. Oh yeah, he can't activate lightsaber because of its lack of confidence that he become a Jedi.
Right.
And I think that's what the Inquisitor kind of.
Yeah, that's what he insinuated. The Inquisitor is not a Jedi. He's just kind of trained in the Jedi art, the Sith side of the Force.
He's just constantly taunting.
Yeah, it's like always baiting. He's like a fisherman. He's constantly baiting Ezra. And it could, maybe he sees something, maybe when we're in the real version, not the dream state, but maybe the Inquisitor is intrigued by Ezra anyway, and that scares Ezra as well, because it's like, well, maybe he wants Ezra for the dark side, kind of thing.
Right. He doesn't just want to take him out,
He wants to train him.
It's like the Inquisitor's job is just to wipe out the Jedi.
Right.
I mean, instead of, in this kind of case, maybe really some potential.
We want to turn, like that in the, I can't remember the name of the episode, but where they were like looking for the young Force users, and then they were never seen again. It's like, are they taking them out, or are they training them to be Dark Force, to be Sith warriors, or to use the darker side of the Force? To manipulate them. And I think Ezra is strong. I think that the Inquisitor senses Ezra's Force strength and really wants that. And if Ezra doesn't go along with it, he has no problem killing him. I mean, it's like, okay, one more kid. So.
I mean, I think the next part we see is kind of another image of something else we see he's afraid of. The possibility of his friends being disappointed in, and that's when he sees. That's when he gets the image of, there's a lot of falling in this episode.
Right. Yeah, which is a very common fear. I mean, I know I have it. Like, this is one of my very real aggressive phobias, is that fear of falling, because of what it means. I mean, it's a fear of failure. It's a fear of lack of control. And Ezra has finally found this unit, this family that he could be a part of, that they've accepted him, warts and all. And he's just experienced big fear. He's lost Kanan to the person he fears the most. And now the people that he has come to trust, for a kid who doesn't trust very easily, and now they're bad-mouthing him and they don't really care about him, and he's going to lose his family again. That just it was all those fears that Ezra has, that he had to overcome all those fears.
I mean, just earlier he said he's afraid of being alone again.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't afraid of death, like the Inquisitor. He's like, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being alone.
I mean, and then we hear Sabine say, "Yeah, he's just a little kid. I pity him."
Yeah, which of course is the wrong thing you want your crush to say.
I mean, he didn't just say "Oh, he's just a kid." He said, because Ezra's really a teen, so he didn't just say "You're a kid," because that would be a bullet. But all the way down to little kid. Isn't that what she said? Little, just a little kid.
He's a little kid, right?
And that just really just.
Yeah, that means she doesn't see him with any potential to she just sees him as a 7-year-old.
Right.
And isn't he cute? I'm gonna pat him on the head and send him on his way with a lollipop.
Yeah, put him in Chopper.
Can we get you a bottle? Does the baby need Chopper? God.
Chopper would be the babysitter.
Yeah. Oh, worst babysitter ever.
I think Hera, he'd be so helpful, cops.
Yeah.
Because that's what Hera is just huge about, and that's what Ezra is really always kind of learned about Hera, is that she's kind of leader. She's kind of more leading this cause.
Right, she's the rebel, really. She is the one who is doing this for a nobler purpose. Whereas Zeb, you kind of tell, there's no real mission for him. There's no real impetus for him to help people. He's just Zeb. He's just kind of going along with everybody. This is just the people that he could stay safe with, and he cares about them. But there's no doing this for a higher purpose.
I mean, I think possibly is that the Empire took away a lot of his family.
Oh God, yeah, the Empire destroyed. I mean, how many civilizations? How many races of beings? And Hera, I think, is the Greenpeace activist, whereas the others are like, yay, Greenpeace. Yeah, we support you. Go do that kind of thing. But she's the one with the passion for bringing down the Empire without anger. She never shows really anger towards the Empire, whereas the others do. Like Zeb and Kanan express ugh, the Empire. Ugh, the Empire. Whereas Hera doesn't really do that. She's focused on helping people.
Right.
Maybe she's the mother of the rebellion.
And we see that Ezra is really starting to lose it around here. He's really starting to lose it.
Yeah, that's when you start. I mean, it's obviously a dream sequence or an inner monologue that he's having, but it's still very heartbreaking for him because as an audience, we've come to attach ourselves to Ezra. He is kind of he's the the Luke. We always try to find a character that reminds us of somebody else we like. We kind of attribute roles. Okay, he's the Luke, he's the Han, he's the Vader, he's this. And we kind of try to place people. And while they're not exactly, he is the Luke. He is the one we're supposed to root for. He is who the story is about.
Right. I mean, I think, and you kind of get this cliche of, this can't be real. And
Right.
I was like, does this feel real? Does this feel fake to you? Is this
Right.
real enough for you?
Right.
I think, and I think, is that when, and shortly after, we see the Inquisitor, like, really Ezra just has to kind of, like, trust himself that this really is not real.
Right.
Ezra just kind of, like, stands there while the
Right.
Inquisitor just, like, strikes him down.
Yeah, and I think that's the moment where Ezra just kind of becomes the person, like, that's when he's just finally kind of gives himself over. It's like, this isn't happening. I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to meditate, and this will go away, because this isn't happening. I can fight this. I can't give this the power over me that I've given these feelings in the past. So.
Right. And then I think the next thing we kind of see is the little particles of something.
Oh, the glowing things.
Yeah, and it's just, and I think, and I've seen this in other kind of sci-fi thing where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not really going to show an image of the person, but they just kind of have some kind of like little bits of light to kind of represent some kind of being.
Right, it's almost like in Scottish and some Irish folklore, there's the will-o'-the-wisps, and they're the lights that lead you, and they can lead you into mischief, and they can lead you astray, but they can also lead you to something beautiful. So I kind of took that as like, that was, the essence of who was speaking, lighting the path, because that's what that particular being would do.
Right. I mean, I think, and of course, really around that is when we get Yoda's theme, which that's probably it's one of my favorite Star Wars themes.
It is, and you hear it early in the episode too, and they come to it. They play it several times. Just they start playing a version, kind of like a theme. You go, oh, that's Yoda's theme. Kind of when Kanan is meditating and on the ghost, and then you hear bits of it, and that's when it really kind of hits you that it's Yoda. And that was I listened for that cue specifically throughout most of the episode. Because it is, like you said, it's one of your favorites. It's one of my favorites too, because it's just this beautiful, melodic, almost serene version of the main title in a sense. It's still got some of the same tones and beats, just muted. And that, along with like the Han Solo and the Princess, which is my favorite of the character themes. It just really is so iconic to me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that.
Yeah. So it's
with your whole crush on Han Solo thing.
Oh god. Woo! Wanting to be Princess Leia. But yeah, I thought it was just perfect that they used it, and that kind of gave me a hint. When I first watched it, I was like, I wonder if this means we're going to get some wisdom from Yoda. Because whenever I hear that particular progression of chords, I think Yoda. That's just how a Star Wars fan's brain works. Oh, da, 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 da. Oh, that's Yoda's theme, kind of thing, And
this was actually Frank Oz.
Yeah.
So I thought that was as opposed to Tom Kane.
Yeah. No, it was. I could tell right away that it was Frank, because there is no one. Tom Kane does a great job, no question, but there is no one like Frank Oz. Miss Piggy sounds fine nowadays, but she sounded so much better when Frank Oz was doing her. I loved Miss Piggy. But yeah, it made me tear up, because I was like, oh, this is Yoda. This is truly Yoda.
Yeah. And then we kind of see, and I was always kind of curious about, how this is working, because then we see, like, Yoda talking to Kanan.
Right.
So what kind of...
Yoda's a multitasker.
He's a multitasker.
He's a multitasker. He could talk to two Jedi at once.
Because, we don't, because when it comes to things like some of these temples and such, you're never really quite sure what's going on.
Right. Maybe they aren't really hearing Yoda. Maybe they're just sensing Yoda. But he was very specific, and Ezra wouldn't know who he was. Kanan recognized his voice immediately. So Kanan didn't seem all that surprised to hear his voice either. So I it could be a clue to him that Yoda's still alive if he didn't know already, and he needed to consult someone about his own fears, about his feelings of being, his feeling of being unworthy to train, and he needed to talk to Yoda. I don't think any other Jedi would have, who might still be alive, would have done any good. But Yoda, if you have Yoda behind you, you're pretty set.
Right. I mean, I think, and of course, Kane, of course, Kane and when he appeared is when I think when Yoda appeared or started speaking is when Kane was getting pretty restless, so it's taking too long and such. And
Yeah,
Yoda's
very,
patience, know nothing of your training.
yeah. It's like it's pretty much exactly what he ends up saying to Luke. And poor Yoda being stuck with all these young Jedi who don't, who like with Anakin, then now Kane, now Ezra, and then Luke is like, they're all too old. They're all too angry. They all need a big whack upside the head with a lightsaber to get them,
Ouch.
Out of, a non-activated lightsaber.
Non-activated. Okay. Good.
Just to smack upside the back of the head, because they're all kind of just so focused on themselves. And that's, I think, what Yoda's purpose in visiting or guiding Ezra was to kind of get stop focusing so much on yourself and really let the Force become a part of you. And that's when the temple fell away and he was in space, and it was like he was becoming one. And then he was given that beautiful gift.
Right. I mean, I think, and let's see. Yeah, I guess that was the next. I'm trying to think. Was that the next part? Next thing that happened?
After Yoda takes him on the path, and they go into the room, and he's talking to him, and as he's talking to Ezra, the walls kind of fall away, and you just see space.
Yeah,
and then
that's also
glowing kind of circle under Ezra.
Yeah, that's really the music cue. The sticks out to me is when the Yoda's theme starts playing right when crystal starts falling.
Yeah,
which was really
every time they played it, I was just and then when I saw that crystal, I was like, oh my god, because that's not something a lot of Star Wars fans have ever seen, because it's never shown in the films what a kyber crystal looks like.
Right.
I mean, those of us who've read the novels and who have all the essential guides to the this and that, we've seen pictures of what it might look like, but there's never been anything canonically to say this is a kyber crystal. We only know what it in the expanded universe. So it's so cool as a fan to see, oh my god, that's the essence of a lightsaber.
Right. Didn't we see some kind of thing in the Clone Wars? Some kind of we saw that giant kyber crystal.
Right, but I don't to see the one that you would put in a lightsaber. I've never.
Well, I mean, there was that one time. Well,
I don't really remember
the Padawan that episode where it had all the younglings making their lightsabers.
Oh right.
It was that one, and then there was
okay.
And then of course when Obi-Wan during that one, I don't remember what episode, but Obi-Wan his lightsaber got damaged, so he had to take it apart and such, and then he had to put it back together while Anakin was doing some fight.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. It was for me, I was seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's been a while, and I think it's.
I can't even remember all the episodes of Clone Wars, and I've seen them all. But sometimes you get to be a point where there's so many that they start kind of blending, and you forget the little details. But
I think thinking about this is a little. Was a little bit different. I mean, I think with that, of course, tons of, it wasn't really tons of crystals, just tons of things.
Right.
So that was a bit of there. So it was kind of a similar kind of thing, but at least that was the goal was the fuck crystal. Here it was just kind of
given
here, and I'm not.
Because part of building your lightsaber is finding the kyber crystal, and that's how you get your color. That's how you determine. That's what determines what color your lightsaber is what color crystal you have. So that's part of the task task of building your lightsaber is to find a crystal. And some people have to go long ways away and travel for great distances to find some.
And it's not like, he went to some kind of, beginning of the temple. It's not like there was any kind of, special instructions.
Right.
No, special riddle. Do this, and you will get something special or something. He just kind of, went through it.
Here's your crystal, build something. Build a lightsaber.
He just went through, this temple, as this kind of test, and it was just not really, and how this like crystal just kind of comes down. It's just still kind of a mystery.
Right.
There isn't really, with most of the Jedi gone, there's not really the explanation to this. Is very unclear.
There's no website that he can access to build one, because it comes from the knowledge of how to build a lightsaber comes from Jedi training, and that's one of your intermediate tasks is building your own lightsaber. And so you have to use the Force and to kind of guide you into building your lightsaber. We don't know if there are instructions that are given by the masters, or if there's a class that all the younglings take in the past to learn how to build a lightsaber. But Ezra seemed to know. He was asking the crew of the Ghost for specific things.
But before that, I guess I would like to kind of mention, like, Ezra had another little moment where it's like, Ezra, that's a kyber crystal.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a kyber crystal.
Kyber crystal.
It's just one of those, like...
Oh, that's so cool. What is exactly a kyber crystal?
And I think it was just kind of a thing where Kanan is just kind of shocked. He didn't really know. Like, what was Kanan, like, Ezra's like, at the very beginning, he's like, what will I find? And Kanan's everything and nothing.
Right.
I think, what exactly are we supposed to, what did we learn?
From about everything and nothing? Yeah. That you have to give up everything and be left with nothing before you can truly find, access that part of you that is one with the Force. You don't have to keep it that way, but it takes everything you are and it breaks you down to nothing. And then you become one with the Force, and then you have everything, but like in the Buddhist philosophy, everything is also nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and like we were saying, the whole, and also when they finally leave, and it all kind of, and it just kind of like goes back the way it was.
Yeah, because that's what life is. I mean, life is not always up and down. Life is most of the time, it's a straight line. It's, back to reality. This other stuff is extra,
It's like,
yeah.
I know it's
the past. The past, right. Because that's his past. Because training in a temple, that's gone. So the past is in there. And you don't, like the Jedi. Jedi doesn't reflect on the past.
I mean, I think another thing to mention is that what he said before is the whole, like, the Empire could be monitoring this. So you never know.
Right.
So you never know. The one time they're there, the Empire comes.
Right, and I think that's what left open the possibility that the Inquisitor was really there. Was because, maybe he's detected this as well, and he's really here. But I don't know if the Empire could have, opened the temple, because I think it did take the two of them.
Right. A master.
And an apprentice, the rule of two. Yeah, and then Ezra goes into hiding for 2 weeks, and into his room for 2 weeks and doesn't come out.
Right. And I think it was just very interesting that, opposed to, like, that episode, the episode with all the, this is gonna bother me until I figure out the name of that episode.
Yeah, I think something about when Kanan says that a temple it's the past. It's like the old ways are in the past. It's time for the new. It
was Padawan Lost.
Oh, okay.
That was the episode. I think. No, that's not it.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of, like, the new way of training. This is the beginning of a new breed of Jedi, and I think that's what Kanan meant when he said the old, that it's the past. The old ways are in the past. It's time for the new.
Right, and on that little ship, in the Clone Wars, they had, like, all tons and tons of, like, supplies about how to build lightsabers.
Right.
And David Tennant's character got to, like, do all sorts of those different things.
And win an Emmy for it.
Right. But then here on the Ghost, he's just kind of had to MacGyver his own way.
Basically. And I looked at it and I thought, that hilt is really cool, but it looks like a staple gun.
Right.
And I thought, but that's a really unique design. And I've never really seen it. I think the closest we have to something like that is the Inquisitors, which just has that circular aspect to it, to the hilt that lets him spin it.
Clone Wars is called the Gathering.
Oh, okay. I'm not really great at remembering titles of episodes.
But yeah, it's
Unless it's Doctor Who. I remember Doctor Who titles.
I think that it's kind of lights. It's kind of the fact that
Yeah.
kind of contributed.
Yeah, they Frankensteined a lightsaber.
And at the tip and kind of the front, it looks like almost like a blaster or something.
Yeah, it definitely had I think, it has the cool hilt, and you have some protection from that design. Your hands are kind of protected because you have that bar there, like right where his knuckles would be. As long as he can use it and wield it and it not, have any parts that are like interfering with its use, I think it's going to be a pretty cool design, for him. It's definitely unique, and I think a lot of lightsabers from the OT and the prequels, they kind of have the same kind of basic look to them until Dooku came along and was like, "Oh my God, it's curved! It looks like an old school pistol," which I thought was so cool for Christopher Lee to carry.
Speaking of Christopher Lee, I've been the last couple of days I've been watching the Lord of the Rings. Christopher Lee, it's just
man,
eating up those scenes.
he reads the Lord of the Rings trilogy once a year. And he has ever since he first read The Hobbit. He reads them once a year, and he actually met Tolkien. And my favorite quote, and then we'll start talking about Lord of the Rings because I could go on and on because I'm a Tolkien nerd. Was Peter Jackson was telling him, you're going to stab him in the back, and it's going to sound, and Christopher said, Peter, I know exactly what it sounds like to be stabbed in the back. Because Christopher Lee was a spy for the British in World War II. This is a guy who has killed people. I mean, this man, it was a secret agent, basically. So he knows exactly what to do and exactly how these things sound. And he really, like, if you hear him talk on Tolkien, it's just, like, the man knows everything. So, yeah, Christopher Lee is just the coolest man on the planet. And he recorded a heavy metal album.
Oh, yes, I heard. Yeah. Let's see, anything else you have in your notes you'd like to mention?
I always love Yoda. He's one of my favorite characters because he always gets to the heart of what the problem is. And I really felt like he really got to the root of Ezra's and Kanan's issues. Like, what what is it really that you're worried about? He got to it. And yeah, sometimes he does it in a kind of circular way of speaking that people often mock the Yoda speak. But as George Lucas says, he's not speaking it backwards. He's speaking actually proper English.
Oh yeah, I think that's a good add. But yeah, I think overall, definitely. You think it was too soon for him to get his lightsaber?
No, because I think he needs to train with it, and he's at the right age where a Jedi would get his lightsaber. That's not a training lightsaber, obviously, like the younglings use. So he's the right age. And obviously Yoda felt like he was ready. And who are we to challenge what Yoda says?
It's definitely a really cool start this season to the mid.
Right. And we had a great ending to the first season, the first half, because it wasn't really an ending. It was we had the continuation this week. But I thought it was a really great way to pick it up again and keep the momentum going.
Agreed. That's kind of it. So,
yep.
Overall, a really strong episode.
Definitely.
This is definitely the episode to beat.
Yeah. So. This has set the tone.
So, Nicki, where can people find us?
Well, on Twitter, you can find us at Radio Free Indoor, as also you can find us at facebook.com/Radio Free Indoor if your proclivities run to Facebook. You can find Jonathan on Twitter at JEBell49er, and you can find me at iHeartColson.
And so, go to those different social media stuff and communicate with us. Tell us what you thought about the latest episode, as well as any of the latest Star Wars news.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when we'll get the next Radio Free Indoor out. Might be soon. Quite sure.
It's hard, but we're waiting for details. For more.
Right. So leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't done that. We reached 50 likes on the Radio Preeminent page, so thanks for that.
Yay!
Check out my other podcast, Radio Ramen, our anime podcast. We're getting ready to start Dora X2. So.
And if you're an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, check out my other podcast at helicarrierpodcast.com.
Yep, you and Andy.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's it.
I think we're good.
All right, thanks for joining me. Again, Nicki.
Oh, absolutely, and I hope you feel better.
Thanks. Yeah, so 2015 is finally here.
Yes, it is. Only 11 and a half more months until Star Wars.
Alright. Okay, so that's it. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nicki.